I wanted to start by asking you a little about your journey. So you're with Experian and you've now moved. And I thought it'd be great to maybe just recap a little bit about your journey because I was super fascinated in the last episode when you told me about, your PhD program in genetics and then moving into IT and security and wondering if maybe you can give us like a recap. And I want to encourage everyone who has not heard that episode to go listen to our first conversation with Wendy because she goes into great detail talking about everything. But I'd love if you could maybe do a quick recap of your career journey.
Thank you. I'm sorry for firstly, I need to apologize to Mike for sort of like getting him to sit through that episode, making him suffer. But yes, so my career background is quite eclectic. So I started off as a scientist. I was a trained scientist in medical genetics, to the extent that I did a PhD in medical genetics. But unfortunately, my biology didn't actually, wasn't gaming sort of my career choice. I got very sensitive skin, so it wasn't handling the kind of, the hygiene regime necessarily well. Because if you do experiments, you should be washing your hands and all that stuff afterwards, even when you have gloves. So it reacted rather badly to that. So I actually had to retrain. I did things to go around. I actually did a master's after my PhD. I had to retrain in computational biology. It's another STEM subject. I mean, I'm generally quite geeky, so it's sort of, yeah. It's like, what can I retrain? Another STEM subject. And then joined. I'm geeky, but I'm quite social as well. So I actually I started my career at Cisco as a network consulting engineer. So, moving from one lab to the wet lab to the dry lab, I guess. And as part of that process, so networking was fairly, it's pretty much a new subject to me. I did do computer science at A level, which is in the UK. So that's the exams you take before university, before college. So I did have some exposure to networking, but it was very much, it wasn't something that I had a lot of experience in. And as part of the sort of getting into a new field and sort of discovering what it involves and so on, I realized, hang on, connectivity is absolutely fantastic in terms of efficiency, getting things done faster, and the protocols that we've been using is designed to sort of help with that. But and in the wrong hands, that could cause a lot of trouble. There's no secure, you don't secure, there's no kind of inbuilt security, at least in the sort of earlier protocols. And just because I'm not somebody who like to sit still. I thought, hang on a second, that sounds like a fantastic career, and also a lot of the, at the time there's a lot of the kind of detection mechanisms. Some monitoring, security monitoring tools were using some of exactly the same algorithms I've had experience of in computational biology and in medical genetics. So it kind of had that, familiarity for me to the subject. So I sort of did a sideways step of moving into cybersecurity effectively, and stayed pretty much in consulting. I really enjoy the client-facing side, and in fact, Experian was my first in-house role, where it wasn't an advisory role, but I was inside an organization. But because because before that it was client-facing, I did actually get exposure to a lot of different customers, clients in different industries. And I would actually encourage, if you're sort of starting out young in your career, just get as much exposure in as many different industries as possible, so that you actually, get some experience on what the sort of this the posture, the how what the sort of styles of the different industry. I think that could actually help with your career onwards. But anyway, because of that consulting exposure, uh, I was very they throw you in whatever engagement, right? Consulting is sort of, and you've got to learn, pick things up pretty quickly. Because of that, I was when I was at Experian, I was asked to be a subject matter expert for the Global DevSecOps Transformation Program, and I actually have no application security experience before before that. Um, However, because the exposure you get from consulting, you kind of realize actually you can pick it up, and and I'm good at research. I came from a research background, and I know that I can pick things up quickly, and I can have reasonable judgment career wise. In terms of decisions that should be made. So I kind of yeah no I was fortunate enough to join a program, and the opportunity was presented to me, and I kind of said okay, and it worked out really well. So I think I think just that kind of your ability to sort of want to willing to change and and shift and kind of keep developing yourself. That sort of very much the sort of chain for my career.
I want to talk to you about your mindset because as you shared that journey, I'm listening to you how you describe these pivots, right? So you go through a very rigorous PhD program at Oxford University, one of the top universities in the world, PhD in genetics. This is serious study, research. You're in the lab. And then you talk about how because of certain things going on, you had to then leave genetics. And so you like record scratch, you then pursue a master's degree in computational biology, right? And then you move into network consulting, and then you move into IT security. Now you're working with satellites. I want to talk to you about your mindset to just keep pivoting and keep growing, because I feel some of us would like when our dreams of becoming like you pursued becoming working in genetics and you couldn't follow through with that, and some people would be crushed and give up, and you just kept like pivoting.
So I was crushed. I mean, at the beginning, I was crushed. I was like, oh, this is, you do put your heart and soul. A doctorate is, I think, it is an experience, right? It really, and it is kind of, it's also emotional kind of experience. It's not just a job, right? So you do put your heart and soul into it, and you do work. You do work insane hours because you're in the lab during the day, and then you need to make sure that you're doing the right type of experiment, because they're expensive in terms of cost of reagents to do those experiments, equipment, and time. So after the experiments, you go home and you read about what's the latest research, what people are doing, what's working, what's not. So it's insane hours. It is what it is actually. You do, it is actually a bit of like a baby, your baby, rather than actual job. So I was crushed, when it first happened. I was like, oh, this is not good. What do I do? But then I think, in I do have some very positive influences in my sort of in my life, and I think my father being one of them, and he's always sort of like very positive, and you know he's sort of very get up and go. So, and I sort of did have their support, my parents' support, and sort of and friends and family, close friends and family, you know. And they said, well, if this doesn't work out, you just have to try something else. But it wasn't, it wasn't. I don't want you to sort of sound like, oh, it was just like, it didn't work out one day and the next day I decided. There was a bit of soul searching. It's like, what do I do now? Before I sort of undertook that computational, it's more studying and it's retraining. So, but I think my mindset is, well, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, right? There's no point, by all means take your time to, it's a bit like mourning a loss. You do sort of mourn, what it could have been, but you do have to at some point get up and sort of say, okay, no, it's, you got to move on, and you got to move on to the next one. And once I did that, and that's the main thing actually, once I did that, like all the other subsequent pivot was easy, because that was the main pivot I had to do, right? After that, once I'd done that, and then it worked, because I was fortunate enough to get some more funding for it as well. So it wasn't it was it was sort of the heavens looking at me that time. It kind of give you confidence that actually you can do other things, and you can pivot, and the human brain is infinitely malleable, and you can absorb different type of informations, and as long as you put in the effort and you do the work, and it will be okay. So I think that first pivot was the difficult thing, but once after that is, and I think that's actually, it was a very good mindset for consulting, because in consulting you literally it's one week you're on this engagement, next week you're on a different client, and it's sort of you do have to kind of react pretty quickly and pick up stuff as you get along. So it wasn't it may have come across as easy, but it's not, as at the beginning wasn't easy, but once I made that step, any other pivot became a lot easier. It's compared to the first one. So yeah. So I don't want it to make it sound like, oh, don't, it's a lot of time and investment for to get to that stage.
Definitely, Wendy. And I just wanted to bring up when you were speaking about just all the different changes and how you have to just push through, the next career move and just go with it. It kind of reminded me of when I was high school age. I was always fixated on one career. And then once I got to college, I changed my major so many times. And there's tons of perfectionists out there, or tons of end all be all, or my parents engraved this career into my mind, and if I don't do it, I'm going to disappoint my peers and my family. What advice would you give to young people who are, I don't know, they're in high school, or they're just getting into college, and they're just so fixated on a career, but it's mainly because of external pressures that they're facing in society to choose this route. Um, so yeah, I just want to know what you would have to say to those people.
Sorry. Yeah. 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 So I think it's when you're younger, it's also, it's sort of, you want to do the right thing, right? At least when I was younger, that's what I wanted to do the right thing by my parents. And I'm slightly ashamed to admit that I partly did a PhD because it was sort of a kind of expectation, that sort of. So I understand that perfectly well. However, with my pivot, but especially the final pivot in cybersecurity, I chose it because I was passionate about it. I chose it because I thought I would do well and I have the skill sets. I chose it because I thought it was a career path that was challenging and that's meaningful for me. So I think for those younger audience out there, who's making, when they're in high school, at university, you need to do something that you are passionate about, you enjoy, because there will be a lot of grit. It's I would love to say, oh, it's all beautiful, it's all wonderful, and the path is sort of laid out for you. That's not the case at all. You do, everybody take twists and turns, maybe unexpected. So you really need to do something that I really, you can be good. There's, I don't know how many fields out there. You can be good at any field if you put your mind to it, right? If you do your best, and it helps if it aligns with your kind of skill sets as well, your ability. But if you put your mind on it, you can literally, and you can be successful in any sort of any field. and it doesn't really matter. I'm not. Um, I'm fairly open-minded about what people do. I think if you can do, I think I have respect for you if you can be, if you do, if you work hard and you make yourself, you make a success at whatever field you are, whether it's bricklaying or I don't know, sewing or designing, rockets or satellites. So it's the same path. So you choose, if one piece of advice, just think, choose something that you think you enjoy and do it like in the long run. But it, it's not, you don't have to be perfectionist about it. You can, when you're young, especially when you're young, you've got time. Just try out different things. If you're not sure, just try it out. It's no biggie. It's like you said, you change your major. It's fine, right? You change your major and you sort of, some you enjoy, certain topics or certain classes, and you sort of didn't enjoy. So just try it. It's when you're young, that's you have that time to experiment. Okay, sounds a bit bad, but you know what I mean. You can try it. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, go to the next one. At least you know.
Exactly. No, I couldn't agree more. And I always like to tell people when they're in college or when they're in high school, dabble into any type of club or extracurricular activity that you could possibly be interested in, because it could change the course of your life, but you have to be open and receptive to the possibility of what you thought you wanted changing. It's a part of self-development and self-growth. And I think everyone at that certain age where the possibilities are endless,
Yeah,
dabble into everything you possibly can, because you'll
absolutely.
find, I believe that that's how people find their passions, being open, receptive, and just being involved in anything you're interested in. Just take that extra step, I think.
Absolutely, absolutely. And your perceptions might change, and as I'm very much a technologist. I like technology. I like, I get excited about, what the future could be, and, what new kind of, tech or developments that we have. Um, I think, and I think we're getting, and it's speeding up, right? I think there's personally, and I could be biased, I feel there's sort of increased investment in technology and development, technology and innovation. And I think even as a relatively mature professional, I think you need to sort of be able to kind of be open-minded about what's coming, what's sort of, going forward in the future, coming up in the horizon, and just continue learning. It really is the sort of like the growth mindset. It's a bit cliche, but it really is. You just have to continue learning because things are just changing so quickly.
We can dive into some things that are going on in the world right now. So, here in the US, it's Asian American Heritage Month. And I just wanted to get your perspective on when it comes to your career journey and also observing what's going on in the US and just trends of just racial injustice and just injustices in general that women are facing and Asian Americans. What is your take on the lack of senior role models and companies with Asian heritage and how that impacts you?
So some of the things, I think even in the UK, I think it's happening is, I think you were referring to, is it's somewhat disturbing. I think, and it's really quite sad. I think I feel quite sad as a member of, obviously, Asian, ancestry, someone with Asian ancestry, to be sort of seeing that. I don't know if this will be this will be useful for the audience, and it's sort of, but like we are so alike. I know we seem like we look different, but genetically we are so alike. The only animal that's genetically less diverse than us is the cheetah, and they are basically dying out due to inbreeding. So it just tells you how, you know, just similar we are genetically. We all have the same desires. We all have the same hopes. We all have the same, dreams. And I just think, if we can just be supportive of each other and to help each other, it will just be a much more positive manifestation of, some of the things that you're referring to. It's, and I don't know, I don't know how we can do that. I do think having, I do, even though I grew up in a quite diverse city. Actually, I grew up in Leicester. It's a city in the middle of the UK, and there's a big Asian, sort of Indian population. However, even in that setting, when I was growing up, there was a lack of, senior leaders that's Asian, firstly, and Asian and women. It's just like there are just not many, and I think that it has affected how I'm kind of made my sort of career choices. So I think I made probably choices which were not, it wasn't as bold as it should have been. I should have stopped. I didn't, like, truthfully, I probably chose things which I thought was safe, career choices which were, especially initially, I thought, oh, this is something that I can do, and this is something that I can, you know, be independent. I'm big on independence. It's sort of very much part of my sort of upbringing. I can be independent. I can sort of make sure that I look after myself and my family and my friends, and if I can, the society, my sort of community as well. But I did. I wasn't. I didn't set out and sort of say, "Hey, I want you." Look, there's a Asian female who's a leader in this corporation or this organization, and I want to be that leader. It was very much just like, I just want my sort of slot in my space, and just do well in my kind of little area. And I should have been much more bold, and I more recently, later in my career, I did have leaders who sort of come to me and say, "Wendy, why don't you, dream bigger? Why don't you can do this? Why don't you do this?" And I think it's unfortunate to have someone else to say that to you rather than you start off going, that's my goal. And I really hope, generation going forward, there will be more leaders, so that there are kind of, for those Asian girls or people with Asian heritage, they can actually look out and say, look, there is somebody who's in senior leadership that looks like me. I know we're very similar genetically, but actually looks like me, and that person's up there. I'm going to start, when I, even at school, I'm going to aim and say, look, I can be that person. I can be the next person. So, in that position, or I can even go further. I think that is important, and I hope that is something that's coming through. I think I did. I think that's one regret I had. I did make sort of too safe. The choices were too safe, as it were. So I think it's a sort of ambition. Just be more ambitious. If you have the ability, just draw that out of people rather than sort of, because we're losing. I do think going forward we're looking very much in an information age, and it's sort of ideas and progress and change, innovation. And if you're not encouraging everybody in your population, you're losing a lot of potential. That that girl could be the person who's going to be sending us to intergalactic travel. That the sort of design the engine for that. So it's I think hopefully I think it's happening, but hopefully more, just more diversity in those leadership roles, so that people they feel like they can themselves make it. I think that kind of hope and belief and that confidence that it gives would help hopefully the next generation, the next generation of folks coming up.
That's awesome. I love that. Fantastic. What I love your choice of words and talking about not being so safe and being more bold and dreaming bigger. I love that. I love that mindset. And I think what's really hard sometimes is when we are raised in families or in cultures where part of the way we're raised is to keep our head down and just work hard, and eventually you'll get noticed. And I want to ask you about that because that mindset, even though like we all want to work hard, we want to be, just make sure that our boss looks really good in the company, that our company's performing really, really well. It's super important to be humble. But at the same time, it's important to be dreaming big and going for what you want. And I wonder if you can maybe address maybe some of the cultural barriers or maybe just the way that we're raised that sometimes prevents us from moving up the ladder in an organization.
So genetically I'm mostly Chinese, but but heritage I'm Oriental Chinese, and that is very much the sort of the mindset, right? It's sort of like keep your head down, don't make don't make too much fuss, do your work, and just kind of just look, just look after your little thing, make sure you do well in your little kind of bubble, as it were. But I do think in terms of kind of the amount, how the impact you would make, I think it's so I it's not because Oriental thing, but I do sort of write blogs and I do share sort of some kind of it sort of experiences with the community in from cybersecurity and sort of genetic side of it. But I think it is important to sometimes put yourself out there, right, and just share, and because it's it's great to sort of do well in your thing, but the impact that you will make is significantly less if you just close yourself off. And I do think that my heritage, my heritage and culture, I did sort of, I was that bolt of just focus on a little bit, and it was much later. I mean, I think I only started blogging about 5 years ago, and I why did I not do that earlier? It's information that's useful. It's not, it's information that's useful to the community. Why don't you put yourself out there earlier? And I do encourage, if if you can, to put yourself, and I do encourage, people with Asian, everybody in general, but I think the folks with Asian heritage, there's a tendency, and I don't want to, I don't want to sort of speak out of line, but there's a tendency to just like keep it to yourself and sort of rather than sort of put yourself out there and sort of inspire the next generation, because we do, it is sort of, if you have the chance to be sort of make it or be there, you want to be inspiring the next generation, because that's our future. Those are the folks that's coming up, and those are the ones that's gonna frankly, that they're the ones who's going to be looking after us in our old age, or designing robots to take care of us, or designing systems to make sure that we need them. So I think put yourself out there a bit more, and it is a risk because you can get whatever back, but I think that you'll have a much greater impact that way, and I think I'm glad I've done it, and from the blogs, I've been sort of invited to speak at conferences and so on to sort of further share my experience, and I do hope that I can, for those Asian girls out there, I can sort of say, look, you can do it as long as you put in the work, and have with a bit of luck, you'll be fine. So Yeah, I mean that's my hope.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, some of my favorite leaders are just super humble people, like no ego. And but it could really be really hard for people who are very, very humble, like you, Wendy, um, to sometimes get that recognition. I'm really glad that you mentioned some very practical things you can be doing, which is being a thought leader, writing about your journeys, writing about your insights. Like that's a great way to start getting recognized for your thinking. And then that moves you into what you're doing now, speaking at conferences, leading conversations, being a thought leader. When it comes to like within a corporation, what would be some tips you'd say for those great workers, those great thinkers who are extremely humble and they want to move up the ladder in their corporation, but they're not quite sure, like, how do you balance being a super humble person at the same time I want to get recognized for the contributions I'm making?
I think so. One of my, I actually at Experience, I was sort of fortunate enough to be sort of on a program. It's sort of accelerating women leaders in technology. That's the name of the program, um, which is sort of, you know, which was spearheaded by our last CIO. Um, I think, I think we there's a difference between sort of, you know, sharing your success and being arrogant about it, right? So you can, I think you can still be humble and share your kind of insight. So the way I did it, so when, you know, literally in consulting, when I sort of, it was something that I just thought, you know, this is crazy. You know, we're seeing the same problem again and again in different people, you know, different customers. You know, it's crazy that, you know, this is the same thing again. So I really wanted to help. So one way that I wanted to help was, look, I can share the experience with the community so that they can learn from it. Right? They can learn from that experience and say, this is what happened before. So I think if you're very humble, I think, and you're good at your job, and you sort of you can actually just share those and have it. It's not comfortable because it does feel like you're bragging a bit, but you are doing you are kind of doing public service because and coming from my, you know, with my sort of academic hat, right? We in scientists that, you know, we write about everything, like the mentality is you write about everything and you write those papers because you want that next person to not make the same mistake you did. So you are putting something out there that is of value. So it's not bragging, but you are writing something from experience that you're sharing with the community. Mike and Destiny, you speak to a lot of leaders that, you know, it will be, if you can sort of give me any tips, that would be fantastic. But that's how I kind of do it.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. I think I was at a Asian American leadership meeting at Experian recently, and the advice that I heard was one of the leaders said that it's really important to declare what you want. And I thought that was really interesting because sometimes like we dream, like Wendy, you're talking about like dreaming big, right? And but sometimes it takes like actually stating it to your leader, like this is what I want. This is the role that I want.
This is true, actually, and actually, I should have said it in for that as part of that program, that leadership program at Experian. That was what we were told as well. Pull it out there. You know what you want. Put it out there, and you know, and sometimes it's worth, you know, it's worth putting kind of maybe a bit more than what you can achieve, because if you miss that, then you know you get to next step, or you know, if it's if frankly, if you're not ready, someone will tell you you're not ready. So you don't need to tell yourself. You don't need to pull yourself back, which is which is a tendency that I tend to do. I kind of like, oh, you know, maybe I'll be there and I'll be safe there. But yeah, no, put it out there and sort of say, you know, this is what I want to achieve. You're going to be told if it's not right for now, but at least you're achieving that. And if you don't get that, you hit the next rung rather than sort of, you know. Yeah, I think that is good advice. I think wherever you got that one, which leader said that one was great advice, actually. Yeah.
I definitely agree with that, Mike and Wendy. And speaking to that and going into just being a woman of color and your field, whichever field I'm speaking to, do you have any advice for women of color in particular who may be afraid to voice that they're not seeing a lot of representation in their field in general, or they feel that they are silenced by the fact that there's not many people that look like them? Like we mentioned earlier, it's really important for people to be able to look up to someone who looks like them. I think it's a very simple thing that I could definitely relate to,
As a
because
child,
growing up,
yeah,
if I saw
yeah.
someone in any influential role, I was inspired. But in my own work environment, and if I don't see it, it just kind of, makes me think, how can I influence this? Like, what advice do you have to women who want to have more representation there?
So I think the advice for sort of the audience and anyone in sort of, you know, anybody in general, but, it's especially sort of the underrepresented sort of group is be bold. Just, if you don't see that, if you don't see your field, a leader in your field that's been, is represented by someone that looks like you do it. Please, you do it so that you can inspire the next generation. I'm not saying, you still have to do the work, but do the work and have that goal at the back of your head. Be that leader. And I think that there are some, kids that, at school now. I think, the mindset is changing. Regardless of your background, I think you can make it, right? So I think make that exactly make be that leader. Just take that chance, go for it, and just be confident, be bold. And if it doesn't work, you tried. If you don't want to be, when you're, I don't know, 90 or what have you, saying, oh, I wish I'd try that. I wish I'd taken that chance. Just do it. Just, please do. And then you can inspire the next generation. I think that's important. I think, yeah, absolutely. If it doesn't work, it's sort of like, the I think not try it and not waste time. I think that one thing that's probably more precious than anything that we have genuinely is time, right? And just sort of, not having, and I get it. I truly get it, because when I was younger, it's like, I'm talking to you now, but when I was younger, it's like, do you want to go on a podcast? It's like, no, 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 thank you. When it go and do like public speaking, or do a presentation in front of 100 people, it's like, no, I don't think so. So I do get it, but take that first step. It's like when I made a pivot from medical genetics, that first step is the hardest. Take that first step, it'll be all right. So it really would.
That is like so good. I love that. Um, and I know we're up at our time, but before we go, Wendy, can you share a little bit about the work you're doing now, um, so everyone knows how to follow you and also what you're up to?
I now have joined a satellite broadband company, and our goal, which is actually, it matches my passion. Right? That the mission is to provide internet access, and in an egalitarian way, to everybody. So even I think even in developed countries, we there's pockets of areas where there's no people don't have internet connectivity, and I think despite some of the you know less desirable effects, I think in terms of education and access to opportunities, it is internet access is the foundation. So that is what the company is trying to do, and we're doing it by launching low Earth orbit satellites, which effectively provide connectivity around the globe. So it doesn't matter where you are. If there's a mountain, it doesn't matter. If it's an ocean, it doesn't matter. which is some of the limitations with our sort of current terrestrial systems. We have the company is a bit of a rise of phoenix moment. I'm quite proud, so please excuse me. But the company, due to various reasons, pandemic, it actually filed for Chapter 11 last year, and it literally only had a minimum kind of workforce and infrastructure, just keeping the satellites which are already in the air, just up there. We are now effectively in a matter of months, we're now building up all of our business and operational system to start serving clients at the end of this quarter. So it's a lot of work, and it's amazing work. It's definitely not boring, and it's quite inspiring actually. An organization can get a second chance. So yeah, I'm delighted to be sort of helping a tiny bit of in that process.
Wow,
Awesome.
Wendy. That's amazing.
Yeah, fantastic. And for those listening in, I love reading your articles on LinkedIn. So I want to encourage everyone to follow Wendy Ng on LinkedIn. Wendy, do you have other social profiles that you're on?
Unfortunately, not now, not at the moment. But yeah, I probably should. This is work in progress.
Wonderful, fantastic. Well, Wendy, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you very much again for having me. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Data Talk podcast. We share new shows every week, and you can find the full catalog of previous episodes, including YouTube videos, on our Experian news blog. You can get access to the full catalog by going to experian.com/datatalk. And we always love hearing from our community, so if you have any comments or suggestions for future shows or guests you'd like to hear from, please let us know. You can leave a comment on iTunes, or you can reach out to us on Twitter @Experian Data Lab. You can also email me directly. My email is michael.delgado@experian.com. Take care, and we'll chat next week.